trust in Jesus.
Excuse me. Yes.
To trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I've proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust his cleansing blood, just in simple faith to plunge him with the healing, cleansing flood. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Yes, 'tis sweet to trust in Jesus, just from sin and self to cease, just from Jesus simply taking life and rest and joy and peace. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. I'm so glad I learned to trust thee, precious Jesus, Savior, friend. And I know that thou art with me, will be with me till the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more.
Been trying to get her to do it with me for a while. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. What a great message and song. And I appreciate folks like the Clarks who pull double duty for us on Sundays, teaching Sunday school classes and singing special music. I know that a lot of you that do that, so thank you so much for your ministry. But a great reminder in song, isn't it? It is so sweet to trust. It's so sweet to trust that he has the answers for every day, and that's what we're going to see in our study this morning. Joel's got handouts for us, and a couple of you kids, if you want to come and help. Nathan Schaefer had the opportunity to trust this week, didn't he? You don't have to get up and come help. Boy's recovered from surgery, emergency appendectomy on Wednesday. You think you've got the flu, and you've got a bit more than the flu, but need to see how we can trust even in those uncertain, unexpected times, isn't it? And see God work in our lives. Here, Connor. Just run that one back to Nathan and sound good for me first. Thanks, buddy. So many opportunities to trust. And, sometimes it's in the busyness of life. Sometimes it's in the unexpected of the day. And yet we know that Jesus is right there with us, walking with us each step of the journey. And a great reminder in song. We have been working our way through the book of Acts. And last week we started a 3-week series on when the going gets tough. Paul has completed missionary journey number 3. He is in the final quarter of this history of the early church, and if things have been difficult on the 3 journeys, things ratchet up just a bit here towards the end of his life, as he is from this point on in prison, from this point on defending himself and ultimately defending the cause of Christ, the message of the gospel. In less than a year, we're going to have a presidential inauguration, January of 2017. I don't know the exact date, but it's coming soon. The president will be placed into office. At that moment where he is inaugurated, he becomes the commander-in-chief. At that moment of his inauguration, he has every right to execute executive orders and to be the chief commander, the chief lead administrator of our nation. The moment of inauguration gives him the authority to step out and do those things. Right now, we have way too many people trying to become the next president of the United States. And starting this week, some of that starts to play itself out in the process of whittling it down to 2 and then 1. At this point, not one of them has any authority when it comes to national government, does it? Some of them maybe serve as congressmen, maybe some of them serve as state governors or former state governors, but at the moment, none of them has the authority that President Obama has. But at that moment, January 2017, one of them will be invested with that authority. President Obama will no longer have that authority that he currently enjoys as the president of our country. To think that each one of us as believers have been given the authority to be witnesses for Jesus Christ. We've been commissioned as his ambassadors. The moment we trusted him as Savior, we were given the responsibility of declaring the truth of the gospel with people. And we've been seeing keys to biblical church growth as we've worked our way through the book of Acts. And last week at the start of the process, we saw the need for honest humility and for silent suffering. But today we come to key number 42, the need for willing witnessing. Number 41, the need for willing witnessing there in our study of the book of Acts. And today specifically, we want to see the effect of the gospel in the lives of people. The effect of the gospel in the lives of people. And that's where we're going to go in our study this morning. Last week we saw Paul as he comes back from that journey and he goes to Jerusalem with the gift for the needy believers that were there. And they're excited to hear about what God's doing through the Gentiles, but there's confusion about how that interacts with the ministry of these newly saved Jews. And you remember Paul identifies himself with 4 who were just completing their vow, their Nazirite vow there in the temple. And as he goes to the temple to pay for their vow to be completed and to finish the process with them, all of a sudden an accusation comes up against him, a false accusation. And yet the crowd, the mob, instantly begins to attack the Apostle Paul. And they begin to beat him. And they're 1 intent and 1 intent only, and that's to kill him right there on the spot out front of the temple. And this mob erupts. It's Pentecost, so there's thousands upon thousands of people there. And it is just a bad thing waiting to get worse. And all of a sudden the Roman guards come down and break things up and start to try and figure out what exactly is going on. And they recognize that for Paul's safety, they need to get him out of that situation. So they take him up to the barracks where they can question him more fully to figure out what the problem is at the moment. And that's where we pick up our text today as we see Paul share the gospel with these people and see the effect that it can have in their lives. God, we thank you today for the privilege it is to study your word. Lord, this is the central thing that we do as a church each week as we come together to worship. This is the central aspect of our worship of you as we study and see what you have for us to learn and to do. And so God, today I pray that you would remove distractions, that you'd remove whatever it is that is occupying our thoughts this morning. That God, you would settle our hearts so that we would be open and receptive to your word today, to the instruction that you have for us. And God, that we would be excited about the privilege of witnessing for you as we serve you each day. In Jesus' name. This is a 2-part message. Today we're going to see the effect of the gospel. Next week we're going to look at the responses to the message that Paul preached. But today we want to see the effect of the gospel in the lives of people. And really there's 4 acts that we're going to see this morning that the gospel enables every believer to perform. 4 acts that the gospel enables us to perform. Just as the president, when he's inaugurated, will be authorized to serve as the leader of our country. So these 4 acts
are enabled by the Spirit of God when the gospel gets a hold of the life of a person and changes us. These are things that we as believers can do as we serve Jesus Christ today. Number one, letter A, the gospel enables believers to purposefully pursue every opportunity. The gospel enables us to purposefully pursue every opportunity. Look with me again at verse 37. That as Paul was about to be led into the barracks, he said to the commander, "May I speak to you?" He replied, "You can speak Greek." You see this respectful request from the Apostle Paul. This respectful request to this one who has just saved his life. Now, granted, the next step is that they're going to beat him and try and get the truth out of him. But at the moment, he's rescued him from the mob. They've carried him up the stairs. And this one who's in charge of the 1,000 soldiers that are stationed right outside the temple, the one who has rushed down and removed him from the mob and is taking him upstairs to beat him, to figure out what exactly the riot is that he's incited, Paul very respectfully requests an opportunity to speak with him. Now, I've got a hunch. You've got thousands of people milling around outside the temple who have been all angry and beaten on him, and here's Paul bloodied and bruised and swollen and all the rest. As they carry him up, this probably doesn't take him to talk for a minute. I mean, his voice is probably elevated because of the mass of people. You've got all these guards carrying up over their heads up the stairs, and as they get to the top of the stairs, just before they go inside, here's Paul. "Can I talk to you just a minute, sir? Can I have just a minute to speak with you?" It's a respectful request on the part of Paul to this commander, who at the moment is both saving his life and going to continue to inflict pain in the coming moments. That respectful request as Paul pursues every opportunity. We've been studying Romans chapter 12 for 3 weeks with the teens on Wednesday nights. You come to the end of Romans 12 and there's instructions there as to how we as believers ought to interact with the unsaved. And it says in verse 17, "Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it's possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Don't avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it's written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord.' Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink. In doing so, you heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." And the early parts of that chapter remind us of the respect and love we need to have for our brothers and sisters in Christ. But that same thing plays over into our interactions with the lost that we encounter each and every day. And so here's Paul in the midst of a stressful situation, but a deep desire to pursue this opportunity to preach the gospel to the people that are there. And so he starts with this respectful request of the arresting officer. "Sir, can I have a moment to speak with you, please?" And the officer's response is one of amazement. He goes, "Oh, you can speak Greek? You're not speaking the same language as all these people that are trying to take your life." A shock almost, but this is a somewhat educated man. You come to verses 38 and 39 to see his passionate plea. You've got the jailer, the commander there, jumping to a conclusion. Well, this guy can speak. This guy can speak Greek. And now he's down here inciting this mob scene out front. I know who this dude must be. He must be that Egyptian Jew that came up here 3 years ago and incited a riot and a rebellion. You see it written by Josephus and a whole host of other early church fathers. That there was this Egyptian Jew 3 years previous that had come and assembled 4,000 people in rebellion against the government of Jerusalem. 4,000 people that he led into the wilderness, assassins, who were going to attack the city, attack the government with the goal of overthrowing it. 600 people were captured or killed by the authorities as that rebellion was put down, but that Egyptian Jew that is inside of the rebellion managed to escape. And so now the automatic assumption is, oh, he's back. He's back to do this again. And so that's the conclusion, the assumption that this commander instantly jumps to. But you see there Paul's passionate plea with him in verse 39. He says, look, I'm not that guy. I'm a Jew, but I'm from the great city of Tarsus. No mean city, it says there. No ordinary city. Tarsus was a crown jewel back in the day, known for its education, known for that primarily. And so here he is from a guy from an educated city, from a prosperous city. He says, I'm not the guy from Egypt. I'm somebody different. But let me speak to the people. See the word that's used there? I implore you, permit me to speak. Here he is with this respectful request. Sir, can I talk with you for a minute, please? Before you take me inside, can I ask you a question? And as he shares with the guy who he's not, He begs him, "Sir, please, before you take me inside, let me address them off. Don't take me out of here yet. Just put me down for a minute, please. I beg of you, let me share with them for just a minute." And I have to think that commander thought he was insane. That commander had to think it's crazy. These people have just been beating you, ready to kill you down there. You want to stop and talk to them? I'm trying to calm this down. If you talk to them, it's going to make it exponentially worse. But Paul's passionate plea that says, "Please let me interact with the people." Verse 40, so when he'd given him permission, Paul stood on the stairs, motioned with his hand to the people, and when there was great silence, he spoke to them in the Hebrew language. You see this immediate interaction of Paul with the people. The respectful request followed by his passionate plea, and as soon as that request is granted, it's an immediate interaction of Paul with the mass of people down below at the bottom of the stairs. You remember the garrison is connected to the corner of the temple, up this big flight of stairs. So you've got all these people gathered for Pentecost, coming to the temple. As they kicked Paul out of the temple doors have been slammed shut so nobody can get back in to bring the riot inside. You've got thousands of people down there at the bottom of the stairs. Paul beaten, bloodied, and bruised at the top of the stairs by these same people. And he immediately interacts with them and shares with them the message of the gospel. How quick are we to share the gospel with people that don't treat us right? The people that most greatly need to hear it. And in the moment of mistreatment, how quick are we to step up and to speak the gospel to them? You would think Paul could have said, maybe I'll wait till they calm down, and then I'll go back and try to share with one or two of them. But Paul pursued every opportunity that was there. He recognized the crowd. He recognized that their great need wasn't to calm down at the moment. Their great need was for the Savior to make a great change in their lives. And Paul purposely pursued an opportunity right here and right now to share the truth of the Word of God with them. That's an action the gospel enables every believer to perform. To purposely pursue every opportunity to share with people. So as you go to lunch today, or you stop at the gas station today, you name it, be intentional about looking for opportunities to share the good news with them. Number two, the gospel enables believers to personally address our oppressors. To personally address our oppressors. It says there that Paul spoke to them in the Hebrew language. It says that twice. He addressed the commander of the Roman army in Greek. He addresses these people in their native tongue, which would have been the Aramaic of the day that the Hebrews all spoke. But it says there that he stood on the stairs and motioned with his hands. Here's a guy that they've just beaten, who the guards have carried up on the stairs to get him away from them so they can't beat him any longer. They're clawing, they're grabbing, they're swinging at him as they carry him up the stairs. And now they get to the top, and they expect what? Him to be whisked inside the doors to safety. And yet now all of a sudden this guy's put down, and he motions with his hands that he wants quiet. And what's their response? Quiet. Silence. He got their attention. That was the first thing that he was seeking to do, was to get their attention, to gain their attention. Here is Paul, who quiets the crowd. How many times before this has Paul spoken? Remember last week, silent suffering. He hasn't opened his mouth once, he's just taken the beating so far. And he stands at the top of the stairs and he's ready to speak, and he gains their attention. You know, I think there in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and even earlier in Acts 21, so often Paul is willing to become all things to all men that he might win some. Here they are in the midst of their furor, in the midst of their anger. And he's still willing to take advantage of an opportunity to silence the crowd and to speak. He gets their attention. Number two, he speaks their language there in those verses. He speaks the language that these people will understand. No doubt that frustrated that guard to no end. I'm sure he's hoping to be able to dissect something from Paul's conversation to help explain the mob situation that just happened out there. I don't know how fluently he would have spoken the Aramaic of the day. A man in his position likely could. But here's Paul. He spoke Greek to the guard to get permission, and now he speaks the language of the people so that they can understand the message of salvation. He spoke their language, and I think there's some good truths in there for us today, too. We've got a lot of verbiage that we use as believers, don't we? It may seem